This is a fairly random video, and I wasn't expecting to record it, but I've got to think about something. It's now 20 past 2 in the morning, and not tomorrow, but the next day I fly, and I've got so many things going on that I am kind of struggling about what to do and what to take with me. I've got some ideas for how I can use a lot of my vintage books. Some are for sale, and some of them you've seen I'm selling batches of books in 50s and dozens and boxes of 20 and 30 Penguin books. And recently I started advertising Ladybird books in blocks of 100. But I've decided that I'm going to keep some and produce some content using them before I get rid of certain bags or lots of Ladybird books. So these are some random ones: canals, the camera, telescope and microscope, how it works, the motor car. And then I've also got other relative ones: how it works, the locomotive, the rocket. And I'm going to create content from these. I won't explain exactly how I'm going to do that today, but I am very excited about it. And then I've got something very interesting. I've got a range of, and this is just a very small selection of Ladybird books that were in what they call their keywords reading scheme. So they vary in complexity and the challenges that they offer to young readers. But I think they are little moments in time frozen from the 1960s of England. So I've got one here called Sunny Days, Fun with Sounds, Boys and Girls, Easy to Sound, We Like to Help, The Big House, Games We Like. And there's opportunities for me, I think, to use some of these in a certain way, which, like I've said, I'll explore first and then talk about it subsequently. So those are on my mind and I'm interested, but I've also got some absolute classics. This is The Icknield Way. A poet called Edward Thomas was a fascinating man. He wrote about rural life. He loved tramping around the countryside, as very much that's what it was called in those days, tramping. And this is his book, The Icknield Way, published and received well at the time. And it's a book that's quite staggering. This edition, if I look at it, is, when did I get this one? I think I've had this one a couple of years. But it's got its dedication at the beginning by Edward Thomas. This, I think, was published in 1917. I'm just a random train ticket that I've got in there from April 1919. So I've had this one at least 6 years. But I've got a publication date on this. I'm just going to take an old address note out of here and look at. Yes, this was actually written, or rather, this was published in 1916. And it's a beautiful book describing a particular footpath in England. And it was a walk that Thomas did with a couple of friends. He wrote the book very quickly. It was only a 10-day walking trip that they made. But it became a piece of English history because it dealt with the walking across the countryside, camping in the side of hedgerows or sleeping at the side of hedgerows, sometimes camping or sleeping in farmyards and barns. But it's a beautiful book. It's beautifully illustrated, and it's a very significant book for me because it deals with a footpath that I have a long association with, the path that goes from the north coast of Norfolk down to the Devon-Somerset border. And it's something I'm planning and I want to do myself. This just deals with a very small part of that. walk. But it's a very beautiful book from 1916. Thomas was killed in the First World War in very strange circumstances. Basically, his heart stopped because of the pressure released from an explosion that took place very close to him. When his body was found, there were no marks on it whatsoever, and that was all they could determine had actually been the cause of his death. But this book was published the year before his death. He had a strong friendship with Robert Frost and had the opportunity to go to the States, but instead he signed up and fought briefly in the First World War. And that's a beautiful vintage book that I have some plans for. Here's another one that I was looking through yesterday. This is Robin Hood. Robin Hood and His Merry Men. This one I think is from 1937, something like that. Let me have a look. 1932, I apologise. First published September 1921, reprinted 1926, 1930, and this edition, April 1932. And it's a gorgeous book. It's got about 20 stories that relate to Robin Hood. But these aren't the original stories or the traditional stories you and I might be very used to. This is the stories that were based on the ballads that were told about Robin Hood. Before everybody could read or before printing became a popular thing, the use of ballads to share stories and embed legends or interesting things with people, it was the ballad that allowed people to learn about their cultural history, social history, and the people who had come before them. And this is just a great book. I have recorded some chapters to video already in the last few days, but just looking at the illustrations and feeling this book from 1932, it's beautiful, and it has given me lots of ideas for some new work. This is less vintage, but it's still a classic. Let me move this train ticket. We don't need that anymore. I should have thrown it away 6 years ago. The People's Guide to Mexico. I've had this book since I lived in Mexico in the early 80s, and it's a classic. It's funny, it's humorous, it's very on point about Mexico. It's written by Franz and the girlfriend he was traveling with, and the ongoing members of their family that have grown up since then are now maintaining the brand. But it's a stunning book, The People's Guide to Mexico by Franz. Wherever you go, there you are. It's useful, but it's also rich with illustrations. Look at this one of the overloaded bus going between villages. So I have lots of classic books and lots of books that I'm very proud of. I feel proud to actually own them. Here's some more. Grimm's Fairy Tales. Quite a small book, published by Collins. I'll have a year in this one, I'm sure. Illustrated by Monsell, Collins Clear Type Press. Have we got a date in this? But it's a repository of stories. Fabulous recounting of the tales of the Brothers Grimm. Now, I can't see a date in this, but it's just a super book, and it seems pointless to have it sitting on my shelf. Look at the illustrations. When I can actually convert it into something that has a different form of life and which I can continue with. I genuinely thought that had a date in it. Originally this cost 2 shillings. Imagine that. This one, beautiful. I've referenced the Scout movement in some of my videos, particularly a couple of years ago when I did one about preparation and planning. But Baden Powell wrote this book, Paddle Your Own Canoe, 2 shillings and 6pence. Paddle Your Own Canoe, or Tips for Boys, by Lord Baden Powell of Gilwell, published in 1939. Baden Powell, of course, was involved in the Boer War, and he broke the siege of Mafeking and became very famous in England as a military hero. But when he came back, he dedicated himself to the youth movement of Scouts. And I love his writing. It's very motivational, it's very positive. I know that being a Boy Scout and then a Scout was a huge positive influence for me as a kid. Here's another beauty. Look at this one. Turn Again Tales, Lawrence Houseman. Again, superb illustrations. This one has been printed and then stuck to the cover. Turn Again Tales, Lawrence Houseman, published by Blackwell. This one, this is a reprint from May 1931. Look at the quality of that. Absolutely stunning. So, stories of legend, tales that people would once upon a time be much more familiar with than they are nowadays. But gorgeous stories, and these illustrations in colour, as well as the pen and ink drawings. So I'm conscious that there is a lot I can do with these, and I want to explore some ideas while I'm away on how I can best convert what I have here into a different sort of, not so much a product, but a kind of educational twist on bringing back into usage the sort of things that we're seeing within these hardbound books and giving them just a different format. This one, J.B. Priestley, he was a man of Bradford. Obviously, he wrote the book, the play in Inspector Calls, which continues to be part of the curriculum. Essays of Today and Yesterday, printed by George Harrap. Look, the binding is very, very basic. This would have been a very early edition of this book. Let's see what we've got in terms of date, because I know I have this. 1926. So this is the first edition, 1926. Uncut pages and a series of essays by a man who was very influential in the way that he added or brought to the literary conversation a strong sense of life in the North, industrial England, mills, and the way that society was structured around manufacturing and production. These two quite bizarre books. I was given these by a friend of mine several years ago. They had belonged to her parents. But look at this book. This is really interesting. It's got these beautiful marbling on the cover. It's very stiff boards. And it goes straight into this, a quick view of the cathedral. There's nothing on the cover to say which cathedral it is. On the end pages, there's no information. And it talks about, and I say this because obviously this was produced by the organisation of the cathedral in involved in this, but nobody thought to think about how to package it, to cover it, to bring it together. This is all actually about Ripon Cathedral, but it's a beautiful little book produced probably in the late 60s, maybe the early 70s. Not quite sure. And yet it's in this beautiful marble or marbled paper binding. And there's another one here. This is a similar approach to packaging information about a particular site. This one is about Fountains Abbey. So it's a guide to Fountains Abbey, printed in 1947. Quite stunning. Lots of detail, illustrations, maps, images of engravings, black and white photographs of the ruins of the abbey. But again, I want to be able to do something with it. And I'll just wrap up on this one. My mother was a huge reader, but also she worked with young kids a lot in primary schools. And this is a book that I remember her taking with her in her satchel when I was a young boy and Mum was still doing teaching in schools, not full-time anymore, but she used to go in sometimes as a cover teacher. But she always preferred primary schools. And this is a book called Very Young Verses by A. Milne, he of Winnie the Pooh. Look at this, the state of it. I love it. It was my mother's, and I was very blessed to have this after she passed. There you go, Phyllis Ann Harris of Sherwood, Nottingham. Sherwood being where I was born as well. Very Young Verses by A. Milne. And Mum has written some notes in it on various pages that appear in the remains of this manuscript. But this was a fourth edition from 1934. So my mum basically grew up with this book, having been born within a year of that date. But it is a super little book, and I know that if I record this to video, I can bring life back into this book, even though the pages are long since fallen apart, the stitching, the binding is damaged. But it's a super book, and I love it. It has great emotional appeal to me because I know this one particularly was my mother's, and she would read these verses to me as a little boy. And hence it holds such special memories. But these are just a random selection of books that I've been looking at prior to my next period of travel and some flying. I can't take them with me in any sense, but just for the present and for the moment, I know that there is a way that I can capture the sentiment of some of these books and some of these bound collections of words and bring those to a new audience who are completely unaware of them. So forgive the little late night ramble, but in clearing my desk prior to packing a suitcase tomorrow, it's caused me to just come up with some ideas, or it's allowed me to find some potential ways of using these sorts of books. And I have hundreds of them in my study. And I think I can do something fascinating with them that will extend their life. I hope that's okay with you to just listen to me as I go through these ideas. But it's very exciting, and there's such a lot going on at the moment. And of course, all of this is happening whilst I've been doing daily writing, with one exception when I didn't write, inside of Book in a Month, Book in 30 Days, NaNoWriMo, rough first draft, whatever you want to call it. That's my next task, to start on some more writing. I've been averaging about 1,200 words a day, and I need to do that for tomorrow to continue in the same vein. Wish me luck, whatever you're doing, whether it's reading, writing, thinking about some of your projects like I am this evening. I wish you all the best, and I hope we can catch up soon.